I am proud to present the first GLAAD Founders Award to one of its founders, Richard Jennings.
I hope we can get through this, because I wasn't expecting that. Thank you so much. I accept this award on behalf of all the GLAAD founders and pioneers, those of us both on the East and West Coast in the mid and late 80s, who stood up to demand greater fairness and realism in the media's depiction and coverage of lesbian and gay lives. I'm so thrilled that many of those pioneers are on hand this evening. This is really like the greatest high school reunion ever. I'm very honored, in particular, that four of you, whom I had the privilege to work with and learn from over the years, co-chaired this event. Johanna Grama, David Bonnet, Dean Hansel, and Michael Keegan. I particularly want to thank this event's phenomenal producer, Johanna Grama. Jahan was my co-president of the GLAAD LA chapter, as you've heard, and working with her was invigorating and joyful. She is a bundle of unstoppable energy and a great exemplar of the philosophy that contributed to making GLAAD so successful. Never take no for an answer. She turned that skill into making GLAAD's award shows in LA a big success. I've very much admired her work over the years and am honored to count her as a dear friend. I'm also thrilled to be on the same program as Jonathan Murray, executive producer of The Real World, as well as one of my very favorite shows on the air, Project Runway. I've been a big fan of that show since its very first episode, have turned a lot of people onto it, and I can't believe I'm being recognized at the same event as Jonathan. So thank you for that. My role in GLAAD's early years started with an idea that came to me during the May 1988 Gay and Lesbian March on Sacramento. While there, I read an interview with then Assemblyman Art Agnos, one of the few strong supporters of gay and lesbian equal rights in the state legislature. He complained that although he was always there for the gay community, we hadn't always been there for him. And he cited as an example a cartoon in the Examiner showing him being led by the nose by a fairy, and the fact there had been no response to that from the gay community. This statement had a profound effect on me, as I realized he was right. Our community lacked an effective media watch and response effort. From my point of view, much of our civil rights efforts were then dependent on litigation in the court system, and we weren't doing enough to generate the kind of widespread public support that would ultimately be needed to move the legislatures along and the courts even further. On my return to LA, I shared my sense of the need for a gay and lesbian anti-defamation group with activist lawyer friends. We started holding meetings to figure out how to organize such an effort. Then in July of that year, '88, I was invited to a cocktail party at the home of some lawyer friends with GLAAD's first executive director, Craig Davidson, who was visiting from New York. GLAAD had had no presence on the West Coast up to that point, and although I'd heard rumors of such an organization, no one had been able to confirm before that evening that they were still in existence. I was inspired by Craig's description of GLAAD's phone trees and monthly bulletins listing names of media outlets to call or write. I spoke at the meeting about my intention to start a similar effort in LA and collected names of those interested in being involved. It made a lot of sense to me and others that met Craig that night, including Dean Hansel and David Bonnet, that rather than launching a separate organization dealing with the media in LA, we should establish GLAAD's second chapter in the nation's other major media market. Our next step was a lot of outreach to other organizations and town hall type meetings, including meetings eventually in this wonderful space we're in tonight, which hosted many GLAAD events over the years. By August and September, we were holding general membership and committee meetings, and in October, we made the final decision to incorporate in California's the Los Angeles chapter of GLAAD. Besides our newsletter and phone tree, about this time we also launched the first monthly media watch column for the local gay and lesbian newspapers. It would be more than a year of hard work and organizing before our efforts got us the receptive attention of the entertainment industry, beginning with meetings that Councilman Mike Wu helped us coordinate with representatives of studios in his district, following a front-page View section story on us in the Los Angeles Times. Campaigns against high-profile films like Silence of the Lambs and Basic Instinct that perpetuated the tradition of exclusively negative portrayals of gays and lesbians in the movies, as well as ads we took out in the entertainment trades and educational meetings we were starting to do for industry groups, led just 2 years later to GLAAD being listed as one of the 100 most powerful entities in Hollywood by Entertainment Weekly in 1992. Although I went on to become founding executive director of Hollywood Supports in '92, an organization with funding and backing from entertainment moguls aimed at countering homophobia and AIDS phobia within the entertainment industries, I stayed on the GLAAD LA board, as you've heard, for some years thereafter, making sure that Hollywood Supports efforts, which included obtaining domestic partner benefits for gays and lesbians throughout the industry, and launching very successful AIDS in the workplace and sexual orientation in the workplace seminar programs, were supportive of and complementary to GLAAD's. I was also present when the merger of all the individual GLAAD chapters into GLAAD USA was negotiated. I have continued to be impressed by the leadership and professionalism that have enabled GLAAD to remain a force and influential power in the media and entertainment industries all these years. I believe GLAAD's media work and the vital relationships it has built with our allies in the news and creative communities have played a fundamental role in changing public perception of LGBT lives, leading to the overwhelming public support we've seen in the last decade for things like gays in the military and non-discrimination in employment. The steady stream of negative portrayals and censorship of gay and lesbian lives in film and on television has given way to much more realistic and life-affirming depictions, such as this year's The Kids Are All Right and TV's Glee. It is also vital that gays and lesbians and our key institutions like GLAAD play leadership roles in the wider community. That's why we need GLAAD to continue to play a role in countering insidious defamation, not just of LGBT individuals, but also of other communities, like Arab Americans and Muslims in general, who have become the target of misinformation and negative stereotypes in recent years. I now work in the field of mental health, and it is clear to me that people with mental illness also face much the same kind of stigma and uninformed media stereotypes that gays and lesbians did when I was growing up. We learned way back in the early years of this effort that those who perpetuate stereotypes and negative images of gays and lesbians are typically responsible for doing the same with other groups. So it is important for gays and lesbians to take a stand against defamation and negative stereotyping in general. Such slurs Thank you. Such slurs and misleading portrayals hurt us all, and we as major victims of such defamation in the past must teach others that defamation is always hurtful and destructive. Let me end by thanking everyone here. Thank you for being part of a vibrant community, whether you're members of the LGBT community, the creative community, or both, and thank you for your support of the ongoing work of this important organization.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Jean Smart.